Getting a brief that was so clear from Zimcode did half of the work. I think half the time agencies fight to clarify what is the cause. And Zimcode had that in black and white and say the cause is we realize the problem. We want to live in a country where there is viable management of public finance, where there's no abuse of state resources. And we're doing this because we realize that there is such abrupt and it doesn't even make sense, the amount of corruption and abuse of state resources. So I think they did well in clarifying the cause. Half the time we get a brief from a corporate client, they tend to make more sales. If it's CSR, the client is not really willing to put that much money. So what was clear for us when you got that these guys are very clear about the cause is to then say why. And let's find the why, because that would help us to build on the how we do it and what we say. And the why for us, from my experience building campaigns, in 2008 we were working on a campaign for one of the presidential candidates in Zimbabwe. It was a political campaign, and I can safely say up to now the results have not been announced after that campaign. But our why then was our why then was people were suffering. I remember we used to actually idealize this with the gospel, with scriptures from the Bible that says, "My people perish because of lack." And for me, I wanted to stop where it says lack. The issue that we're dealing with then was lack, and you could interpret it in a plethora of scenarios and say people suffer from lack of jobs, people suffer from lack of opportunities, people suffer from lack of healthcare, from all these things. And how do you respond if you identify the why? Why are people suffering? They have lack. And our response then was, Morgan is more. Because once you identify the cause, you can then inform what the why is. And once you understand what the why is, you go on to build how we can communicate that. One of the campaigns that I worked on when I was employed in SA was as soon as mobile networks started making inroads in Africa, it was really an issue of connectivity then, and that's just before the data era. Just connecting to make a mobile network call. And one of the campaigns that we worked on then was Everywhere You Go. And in both those campaigns and in both those examples, what I realized is I've always been for campaigns that speak to you, to an individual.
Yes.
And so once we had that clarity of the cause that Zimcode is about, and we found out the why, it was easy for us to build on the how, and that goes into the campaign plan that we then did for Zimcode.
I think speaking to an individual from a context that has got vast problems is a big issue, because I think in Zimbabwe we have characterized our problems in various ways, and I think for 2 decades we characterized our problems at a very political level, civil and political rights.
Truly.
So the context was based on making and building a voter, someone who is in perpetual electoral cycle, that we have to change government. Fair and fine, very good. But you don't just change a government in a context that has got such shrinking democratic and civic space, where you cannot even carry out the voter education, where the voter themselves, they get in the voting booth and they're even scared to put the X where they have to put it, because they've been told that there are laptops and cameras that are checking on where they're putting the X on. So the issue becomes too high and above their heads. But when you talk about bread and butter issues of the context, the economic issues, I think you start to build a citizen. And so for me, in terms of building action and advocating for action and building a campaign that calls for action by the citizens, called on understanding the lived realities when it comes to the politics of the stomach, to ask and say, why is it that you are hungry? Why is it that your children cannot go to school? Why is it that women are dying in maternity wards without basics to give, safe childbirth, as an example? So it started to talk to lived realities and asking the critical questions around the context and say, but wait a minute, I cannot just be a voter who is in a perpetual electoral cycle. Every 5 years, I'm looking at who is going to come next. Changing government is awesome, is great, but you have to set the parameters within the context like ours. So understanding context when it comes to advocating for action is a key issue. And advocating, like I've said, I don't want to dismiss the civil and political rights. But the dichotomy that had been put over the years, 2-3 decades, was dangerous, I think, in terms of running campaigns for civil society. True. Because it's either you were in human rights and governance, or you are on economic justice, like myself, the past 15 or so years working on economic justice issues and finding them not sexy at all, But you're like, how is this so? Because these are the realities of our day-to-day living, and we can actually start asking, because the space, the context is already restricted when it comes to voting, when it comes to expression, when it comes to assembly. But in your home, you can ask critical questions around how far. Why is it that I don't have water here? Why is it that I have refuse that is in my yard that has not been collected? Yeah. Why is it that I have gone to a primary health care and I didn't find paracetamol or a syringe, So this becomes very individualized actions that you can actually get. So I think for me, understanding that context that you can build on your very small family, household, individual context, and build that to the higher level questions of saying, okay, if I'm practicing citizenship, it has, of course, to do with voting. It, of course, has to do with expressing myself. It has to do with me assembling and doing collective action. But what is the collective action about? Am I just fighting so that I put an X when I'm in the ballot box? Or I am fighting for my loved ones, for my own very dear livelihood that I need to survive. I need to live. I need water to drink for me to survive. I need food for me to survive. So I think understanding that context and bridging the gap between the civil and political rights and the social economic rights was a big issue for us. We put in the environmental rights within the campaign because we're also looking at issues of investments in Zimbabwe, a country that has been blocked for a long time because of the different challenges we are talking about from the international community and from foreign direct investment. So these are all issues that we had to deal with in terms of understanding our context and saying, okay, so we have a very parochial citizenship, a very intimidated citizenship. Sure. Where do we start from in terms of advocating for action? No. And it has to speak to the individual, exactly, like we have said.